This is democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we end today's show with Jan Egeland, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council, just back from Honduras. But before we go to Honduras, we want to talk about what's happening in Sudan. You are the Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council. Can you talk about the level of humanitarian support, if there is any, in Sudan right now as these militaries fight each other and kill the civilians in the crossfire?
Well, at the moment, Amy, there is hardly any humanitarian work in large parts of Sudan, which was a place in deep humanitarian crisis before this senseless intra-military battle that has engulfed nearly all of the cities, nearly all of the regions. However, I think the story is too much now. Let's evacuate all of the diplomats. Let's evacuate all of the internationals. What will be the role of the Wagner Group and so on? I think the real story is that millions of Sudanese are now in a free fall, and those who are worse off are the millions of internally displaced people and the refugees. And that's why we, and the Norwegian Refugee Council, and all of our peer organizations are now planning how to resume work as soon as there is a pause in the fighting.
And of course, there's been a ceasefire put in place, one attempted ceasefire, but the militaries don't honor it. Are you dealing with these leaders, the military leaders of the country?
Well, I've reached out to those UN envoys who have contact with them. We will also use whatever contacts we can via countries who deal with them, because we need to get to them that this war it's really a war now. It will be impossible to stop if it lasts for much longer. We still have an opportunity to have a real a ceasefire. If they lose completely control over the fighters, as they are in some areas, this will be a nightmare with beyond belief.
We're going to switch gears now from Sudan to Honduras, where you've just returned from,
Yes.
Jan Egeland. If you can talk about the situation on the ground there, what you're concerned with most, and the call by U.S. Senators Chris Van Hollen, Ben Cardin, Tim Kaine, Congressmember Joaquin Castro, who sent a letter to the Biden administration calling for the president to continue to protect Salvadorans and Hondurans with temporary protected status, or TPS. Connect all these issues.
Well, and that's a very important letter, really, and for the North Americans, it's important to realize that in your neighborhood there are warlike conditions. I've been now 3 times to Central America, crisscrossing many of the countries. I was in Honduras in recent days. The thousands and thousands of families in the middle of the crossfire between armed groups, drugs cartels, heavily armed gangs, these people are in the same situation as the Sudanese, or if you like, the Ukrainians or the Syrians, that get much more of the attention. So the reason people are moving north is that there is no security for them in Central America. There is no hope for a better future. So what we have to do, and what we can do as organizations on the ground with resources from North America, but also from Europe and Gulf countries and so on, is to provide humanitarian protection, education, livelihoods, so that there is hope for a better future there. At the same time, as of course North America needs to honor the legitimate asylum applications for protection of people from your own neighborhood.
And can you explain why humanitarian funding in Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador has been reduced to some of the lowest globally during this crisis, and the effect this has, and particularly talk about the effect of U.S. immigration policy?
Well, indeed, it's utterly underfunded, our humanitarian programming in Central America. 1/3 of the population needs humanitarian relief on levels of what you would have in other places, even in Africa, in terms of needs. There is one big donor, and that's the United States. So where is Europe? Where is the Gulf countries? Where are the larger Asian economies? We need to wake up all of the donor nations for this crisis, which is driven by immense violence against women, children, families, climate change, which is hitting this region so hard, but also in poverty in general. So I was in the school, just one example, in La Lima, Honduras. They had 5,000 students in this secondary school 5 years ago. Now there is 1,200, a reduction of 4,000. And I asked why? Because there is too much fear to go to school for violence, and thousands had been walking north. There were several students on their way north at this moment. So indeed, there has to be a real investment in hope in Central America. If not, this will just continue and continue.
Jan Egeland, we want to thank you so much for being with us, Secretary General of the Norwegian Refugee Council in Washington, D.C. this week. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is produced with Renee Feltz, Mike Burke, Dina Guzder, Messiah Rhodes, Nermeen Sheikh, Maria Tarasena, Tammy Warrenoff, Trina Nadura, Sam Alcoff, Maria Astudio, John Hamilton, Rabbi Karen, Hani Massoud, Sanji Lopez, and Dennis Moynihan. Our executive director is Julie Crosby. Special thanks to Becca Staley and John Randolph, Paul Powell, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Hugh Grand, David Prude, and Dennis McCormick. If you want to see transcripts of our show and all our past shows, you can get video and audio podcasts. Go to democracynow.org, where you can also sign up for our daily digest each day. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.